jump into a conversation. And like last time, we'll cover as much ground as we possibly can before 11 a.m. Before I go any further, I'd like to offer our sincere condolences to MLA Teresa Watt and her family. Unfortunately, Teresa is not able to join us for this for MLA Town Hall. Her father passed away recently, and she's dealing with a very important family business, and so she can't be here with us today. But she sends her regrets, and I just want to send our sincere condolences on behalf of the Chamber and all of our members joining us here today. So we wish Teresa all the best, and we look forward to bringing her back onto our third MLA Town Hall, which I have no doubt we'll schedule again in the near future. So just some very brief remarks. Format, you see, we purposely decide to do this format for this event instead of the webinar, where you just see a couple talking heads. I think it's more intimate and personal when we're all kind of sharing our screens like this, and I think it's a better format for this event. So you're all muted. Questions will still be facilitated by me via the chat feature. I want to thank everybody. I've got an amazing list of pre-submitted questions. So I will politely ask the MLAs if we can keep answers on the briefer side. I have about 15 questions that have been pre-submitted to me, and I have no doubt that there'll be additional questions which will come by the chat function, and my colleagues will be emailing me those. So we've got lots of ground to cover. So I'll be brief, you be brief, and we'll cover as much as we possibly can. So as I think Dave said, things are looking up. We're really excited. I mean, we're in phase 2. Rumors of phase 3 on the horizon, the sun's shining, cases are going down by the day. So things are looking great. Our members are getting back up and running. Our own office is back up and running. I'm back in the office. We're going to be open again full time to serve our members starting this coming Monday. So things really are looking up, but there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of economic recovery needed. You know, we know our friends over in Sea Island, that industry has been remarkably hard hit. Tourism's been remarkably hit. Unemployment numbers are very high. There's a ton of work to be done, and that's what we'll be focusing on today through our provincial lens. So without further ado, I want to introduce a very great friend of our chamber and you know, a sponsor that has been such a wonderful friend of our chamber. We can't do what we do without the support of sponsors like Fortis. So as you all know, Fortis supplies natural gas in the province of BC. They have more than 2,400 employees and provide natural gas and electricity to just over 1.2 British Columbians. So truly a massive player here in BC. They're Canadian-owned, BC-based, and they believe in building stronger communities. And I can say firsthand how closely they've worked with us here in Richmond to help us build a stronger community. So on behalf of Fortis BC, we have David Bennett, no stranger to the Richmond Chamber. I think Dave joined us at our last in-person event, our Chinese New Year Gala. He graced our stage. Dave is the Director of Communications and External Relations. And Dave, I know you guys have tons of exciting things on the go right now. I took part in your phase 2 consultation yesterday. So I'll turn it over to you to tell us about the great things that Fortis is up to. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. And yeah, I wanted to just give you a little update in terms of what Fortis has been doing over the last few months. And then in the spirit of things are looking up, talk about some of the things that what our priorities are coming out of this. So as Matt mentioned, we serve over 1.2 million homes and businesses throughout the province with electricity and natural gas. And we knew right away that COVID-19 would affect many customers' livelihoods. So to support our customers, we waived all late payment fees, and Fortis ensures that no customer was disconnected for the energy they need due to financial situation. We have also established a COVID-19 recovery fund, and to date, more than 15,000 customers have applied for that fund. That's both for residents and small businesses. We also know that Fortis BC has an important role to play in helping British Columbia recover from the significant impacts of COVID-19. Over the next 5 years, Fortis BC has a capital spending plan of totaling $3.8 billion that will create good paying jobs across the province while also delivering long-term emissions reductions. We were among the first utilities in the world to set an absolute GHG reduction target, 30 by 30, a 30% reduction for our customers' emissions by 2030. And we look forward towards reopening our society and supporting a broader economic recovery. We see 3 key areas of opportunity. I think near to and dear to Richmond's heart is is our efforts to position LNG, BC as a competitive LNG provider to lower global GHG emissions. And Matt, you attended our, it's actually the Environmental Assessment Office's open houses yesterday. There's one going on next week as well. Our Tilbury LNG facility in Delta has been creating safe, lower carbon LNG since 1971 and producing some of the cleanest LNG globally available. The Tilbury facility is powered by renewable hydroelectricity, which significantly reduces emissions compared to competing LNG facilities powered by gas turbines. Greenhouse gas emissions during the liquefaction process at Tilbury are 1/3 lower than the global average due to this electric drive technology. Fortis is looking to take advantage of a significant opportunity to diversify markets for Canadian natural gas by expanding our Tilbury facility to meet rising demand for LNG. Second thing is support increasing investment in energy efficiency programs to generate employment across BC. So energy efficiency programs support existing workforces and create new jobs. It's estimated that every $1 million spent on this creates 16 to 30 jobs. And there's a net benefit of $4 to $7 million per million that we invest. So we're looking to expand these programs. We can support job creation across the province as we come out of this, the COVID situation. And finally, support the creation of policies to enable increased investment in renewable gas development, including hydrogen. Producing renewable gases like renewable natural gas and hydrogen using the same system to deliver them to buildings, transportation, and industry sectors is a critical strategy to achieving our provincial and national emissions reduction goals. We see a large opportunity to develop hydrogen energy as a renewable resource in the province, recognizing that BC could be a global leader in the hydrogen economy. With a mix of low-cost renewable energy and natural gas reserves, significant energy infrastructure, supportive policies, and world-leading hydrogen cluster, all the elements are in place to lead the world in hydrogen deployment. So that's it for me. I'd just like to say thanks for the Chamber for the opportunity to speak with you. I wish I could be seeing you all in person, but I really look forward to the discussion today, and thank you our three MLAs for attending and sharing their insight.
Thank you very much, Dave. We hope to see you in person soon as well, but a bit more time, but phase 3 looks to be on the horizon, so there's good signs out there. So without further delay, today MLA John Yap and Jas Johal are going to provide brief opening remarks, and to close us out closer to 11, MLA Reid is going to give her closing remarks. So I don't know who's going first, but I'll put you on the spot, John, and I'll go over to you.
Okay, I'll go first. Thanks. Thank you, Matt and Richmond Chamber. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. And thanks, Dave Bennett, Fortis, for being a part of this. We certainly live in interesting times. We've gone through the first phases of the pandemic, and you know, it's still going on ferociously in other parts of the world, but here in Canada and certainly here in BC, we've flattened the curve of infection and kept it flat, and we want to see that continue. At the same time, we need to reopen our economy, and as you know, we're in the phase of reopening. Phase 2 is well underway, and we have seen, all of you have seen that as you've gone out and about, gone to restaurants, gone to shops, that, you know, life is slowly opening up to the new normal. But we have to remember that even though, you know, when I go outside here in Steveston and it's sunny and there's lots of people out and about, and some of them are not wearing masks, that, oh, maybe things are getting back to normal. The reality is there's still over 400,000 people around our province who have been laid off, who are not working, and who are dependent on federal government supports. Thousands and thousands of businesses, some of them you know well, small and medium-sized businesses, but all businesses that have had to really curtail their operations, have to really go into survival mode, and are not out of the woods yet economically. So we have been, as an opposition caucus, calling on the government to find ways to help business, to help with the recovery, making concrete suggestions to help businesses cope with, the effects of a severe downturn in business, whether it's in the hospitality industry or the tourism industry, especially, so important here in Richmond, devastated by the no travel situation. So we actually are at a juncture, and this town hall is very timely because it allows us, the three of us, to hear from you and to take your thoughts and ideas and frustrations and constructive suggestions back with us to Victoria, mostly virtually, because the sitting of the legislature actually starts on Monday, right, in 3 days. And we're all geared up to get back at it and to hold the government to account and to encourage the government to find ways to help get our economy back on track through the effects of this pandemic. So I'll stop there and allow Jas to add a few words, and then look forward to this opportunity to have a good dialogue with all of you folks who are the people who make it happen here in Richmond in terms of our economy and our community. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. And first of all, thank you, Matt and the Richmond Chamber for allowing us to have this conversation with your members and citizens here of Richmond. I also want to thank Dave from Fortis. And, Dave, I really appreciate what you and Fortis have been doing for a community here in Richmond and for the province of British Columbia. You talked about your LNG project in Delta, and I know your partner with the project with Fibre and Squamish as well. And great to have great corporate citizens engage with citizens. So thank you so much on behalf of my MLA colleagues. I'll keep my comments very brief. I think John touched on the broad issues in and around what we're dealing with. There's really two really broad issues that I think we've had to deal with in regards to this pandemic. There has been the public health emergency, which I think Dr. Bonnie Henry has done a good job in handling, and there's more to do. We're talking about a phase 3, but there's going to be challenges along the way, as we've seen in other jurisdictions, an increase in people coming down with COVID in US states. Washington state numbers, while they've done a good job, are alarming, and they're only a few miles away from us. So we have to keep an eye on that as well. So we are not out of the broader public health challenge when it comes to COVID. British Columbia is doing well, but we want to keep it that way as well. And the second part of this conversation really is about economic recovery. And that's what John touched upon. And the numbers, if you look at them, are quite challenging and quite scary. The businesses that have survived, thank God for their hard work and help from government, predominantly the federal government. Basically they've spent a lot of money, about $7,000 per citizen, in regards to helping us get through this pandemic to this point. There hasn't been a lot from the provincial government side. I was over there for an emergency session in March, myself and Mike DeYoung, I think there was 8 of us in the legislature. We approved the budget. At that point, that supply was $36 billion and an extra $5 billion in COVID spending. $3.5 billion of that has been spent, but we still have another $1.5 billion. But in the grand scheme of things, it's very little spending so far on the provincial government side. What I'd like to leave you with, and because I want to hear from you on a variety of issues, from our airport to our border to rental issues and getting our economy up and running. That right now, the challenges that businesses face are significant. The ones that have survived is what I'm talking about here. Right now, according to the Business Council of British Columbia, we could lose 20 to 30,000 businesses by the end of 2021, because they're hanging by a thread. Those that had revenues of, $100,000, $200,000 a month are now revenues of 10,000. People that were temporarily laid off, according to government rules, employment standards, you have 13 weeks of layoff notice. The government extended that to 16. After 16 weeks, you have to pay severance, even though these businesses would like to have some of these employees return eventually. So what that means for small businesses, and I'll give you an example. An events company called me recently, 6 employees, they've kept 1 employee, 75% of that employee's salary is covered by the federal government, the other 5 are laid off. Crunch time is now hitting because they're hitting week 16, which means 5 of those employees will have to be paid severance. And by paying that severance, this business probably over the next few months, will have to declare bankruptcy. This is the challenge that we have. This is an example where the government probably should be extending that Employment Standards Act past 16 weeks, because it's not just big businesses, but it's small businesses, which is the bulk of our economy, that's going to have to deal with this stuff. So those are the issues that are upcoming, that are a clear and present challenge to our economy. And I'm talking literally in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to see this huge issue hit businesses in Richmond and throughout this province. So I'll leave my comments at that. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And thank you once again for having us.
All right, well, thank you both. The first question I have here is, earlier this week, Premier John Horgan and Finance Minister Carol James announced a new online survey and series of virtual town halls to seek input from British Columbians on how $1.5 billion will be spent to address post-COVID-19 economy. We've seen some comments from your leader, Andrew Wilkinson, this week on some of the views expressed by your caucus towards this approach. But I'd like to see if you can elaborate on your feelings towards this survey and if the government's taking the right approach and what you would suggest the government does to manage the post-COVID-19 economy.
Well, I'll jump in first, John and Linda. You elect leaders to lead. You don't elect them to do online surveys, particularly in the midst of a once-in-a-century pandemic. This is where you have to lead. And as I gave that example of that Richmond company with 6 employees, they literally have weeks, and by law, they have to pay that severance. They don't have time for a generic survey that will take a few weeks, and then at which point you tabulate whatever the comments may be, and then you move forward. I think people already realize what the problems are. Question is, what is your plan to move forward? So I was tremendously disappointed. I think we're past surveys. We do enough consultation as government, plenty of consultation. We have budget consultation committees that travel this province. The finance minister is constantly consulting. We as elected officials meet the public all the time and meet elected officials and hear from our constituents and local businesses all the time. We should have a plan and we should be moving forward on it. So I was, to be very blunt, very disappointed. And as John has said, 400,000 unemployed British Columbians, in the groups that are fundamentally hit hard are young people and women, and those in the hospitality and tourism sector, and many others, of course, but those are the folks that are hit. So those people are laid off, relying on predominantly the federal government. They're looking for leadership here, and all we have is an online survey. So for me, it's quite disappointing. I think I'll leave it at that.
Matt, if I can add to that, certainly there's no shortage of survey documents. There's polling companies and probably 3 or 4 surveys across my computer every day. So there's lots of material that could be collaborated, could be condensed, and could be provided. I agree, the information is available. There's no need to delay.
Well, thank you both. Now I have another question, but it's kind of in the same theme as this one. So regarding the emergency fund, one of our members has asked, what questions will you be asking in the legislature about the $5 billion emergency fund? Do you think it has been well managed?
Well, I'll take a stab here. The $5 billion, about $3.5 billion of it has already been allocated. So there is roughly about $1.5 billion that has not been earmarked, which we have been encouraging the provincial government to look at. And we've made our leader has made some specific recommendations, written letters to the Premier with specific suggestions on what to do, ideas like providing a tax holiday, for example, on PST, providing a tax holiday on EHT, employer health tax. These are specific things which we've suggested. Another one, for example, is drawing on the WorkSafe BC surplus to support small and medium-sized business with support for PPE. We're encouraging businesses to reopen and to be safe places for employees and for customers. And we've made a specific proposal that PPE now will be a fact of life for business, as all of us on the call know. So we've made specific suggestions. We're open to hearing from all of you on ideas that we can bring to Victoria virtually, and to encourage the government to consider. And you know, I just want to make a quick comment. As Jas had said, this has been an unprecedented pandemic, but really here we are 4 months into it. The economy has been slowly reopening for the last month and a half, and now we're contemplating the next phase of this. And surely all of this time with the machinery of government at their disposal, that there should have been more planning. What is the economic plan for our province? And to now come out with just a survey at this time is quite disappointing.
Well, thank you. So I have another question. My next question is about seniors, but you know, I think, and if you look at the main groups that have been affected from my perspective during the pandemic, it's, you know, largely been seniors and those most vulnerable. And when you look at the employment numbers, it's disproportionately affected women, youth, and those making lower wages. So everyone, of course, is infected during this pandemic, but we're seeing certain groups hit particularly hard. And, you know, I know as far as our chamber's perspective, we're thinking about how we can advocate to keep, you know, employees working, businesses open, but also protecting those most vulnerable and those most hard hit. But we are hearing more and more concerns from seniors in the community. And I have one question, I'll just read it as received. When will officials allow seniors to get back to the things that are so important to them? Whether social interactions or critical programs that help seniors maintain their health and mobility. Many, if not most, seniors are being more negatively impacted by restrictions than the possibility of contracting COVID. While I appreciate the desire to save us, I think we need to decide for ourselves what sort of interactions we seniors can take part in. So I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but I know, Linda, this is an area that you're leading for the government. So I'll start with you, Linda, on commenting on the seniors.
It's a particular passion of mine, no question. And the caller, the writer, has certainly captured the issue. Isolation is a huge, huge challenge. Mental health is a huge, huge challenge. There are individuals who frankly don't have family members, and their social networks have been what has sustained them over the years. Being denied that opportunity today is a huge challenge. You will know that many, many individuals currently residing in care homes have asked for when the restrictions will be lifted and when indeed they can meet with family members. It's an enormous challenge. Many care homes today are allowing outdoor visit. If the person is mobile enough to be outside, they can meet with their family outside the premise. But the opportunity to maintain and enforce social distancing is sincerely compromised. It's a really, really tough call. Majority of our care homes in British Columbia, about 80% of them actually are brand new. So there's single room occupancy, there's not overcrowding. The notion that some of the older care homes across Canada have very small dining rooms, have very small hallways, has pretty much not allowed individuals to leave their rooms. Most folks in care homes in Ontario and Quebec today are contained. So it's a huge challenge. I'm hoping phase 3 makes a comment. Bonnie Henry, I know, is working on the visitation issues for families to come into care homes. But the notion of isolation, I absolutely accept the contention that it's a problem. There's a huge, huge challenge before us. How we go forward, I think in the next 2 or 3 weeks will make an enormous difference.
If I can add a little bit, Matt, I mean, that's been the frustration, I think, for all of us as elected officials, and I think for families and folks, is just, you know, this pandemic actually impacts us in a way that I think we take for granted, is the biology. We are social animals. And when we're forced to stay at home, certainly with family, but I look at my own son, I want him out interacting with his cousins and other kids, and I know you have kids as well at home. Many people with their elderly parents in homes, and they like to visit. It's tough. It's some of those images that we see from around the world or here in Richmond, where, you know, the kids are outside and looking at their parents through a window. It's heartbreaking. It really is. And you know, overall, society's done a good job dealing with this issue, but it's a challenge, and it will remain a challenge. I mean, you look at the United States. You had people showing up at, you know, the Michigan legislature saying enough's enough with this lockdown and showing up with guns. I'm not saying that's happening here, but what I am saying is that it's really impacted all people, because at its core, we're social people and we care about our fellow human beings. And when we're asked to sit at home and worse, cut ourselves from our parents who are at homes, at other homes, it's a challenge and it's frustrating. And I wish I could wave a wand. I'm sure Linda and John would say the same thing. We fix this, but it's a challenge. going back to the earlier question, I help organize question period every morning. And I want everybody here to know, along with our host leader and our staff, that the broader economic recovery question is our #1 focus as we head into question period, and what you're going to hear from us in the next 6 weeks at the legislature as well. So some of the things that John's talked about, Linda's talked about, and the questions that we're hearing, all of those, particularly the ones where I talked about the company from Richmond in regards to dealing with the employer standards issues today and now that are happening literally weeks from now, that will be the #1 focus moving forward.
Matt, if I could just quickly make a shout out here. It is a challenge for seniors, this pandemic and the shutdown. And one of the initiatives which I will acknowledge has seemed to work well, and I think all of you know about, is the Safe Seniors Strong Communities initiative, where the province provided funding through the United Way to support communities around the province to help seniors, specifically seniors who are shut in, and to match them with volunteers. And this is through the 211 program. So I hope all of you know about this program, 211. Phone BC 211, and if you're a senior, to ask for volunteer support, or if you want to volunteer, call 211 and volunteer to support a senior. And this includes not just bringing meals, bringing groceries to seniors who are shut in, but also just a check-in call or a socially distant visit. So this is something that we collaborated as opposition MLAs collaborated with the government to happen, and has been quite successful from what we can see. But still, there's some people who are not aware. So let seniors that you know who are shut in, who need support, would like another avenue for support, to call 211.
Oh, thank you, John. And from what I'm seeing more, I guess, my personal life is, we know isolation is killing a lot more seniors than, well, I won't say a lot more than COVID-19, but we know, the incredibly damaging impact that isolation can have on seniors who are isolated. So that's a great program, and something I think we have to take incredibly seriously for this fall as we prepare for wave 2 and figure out how we keep society rolling, but also protect those most vulnerable. I have a quick follow.
The program John is describing is operated in Richmond by Richmond Cares, Richmond Gives. So if you have any difficulties accessing it, just give Ed Gavsey a call.
Perfect. We know where to find Ed. Good friend of our chamber, past chair. On this theme, I have one other quick follow-up, and John, I'm going to go to you because this is in your riding, and I know it's an issue you're no stranger to. We had a question from a member asking when Lyons Manor is going to return to Steveston.
That is a question that I've been asked almost ever since I first had the opportunity to be elected as MLA, and it's been a journey for this project. And right now, based on the most recent discussions with government, this project is on hold, and what I understand is that there's a review underway of how to meet the overall seniors support in Richmond, in the Richmond area, and whether this would be part of that plan. As luck would have it, we are coming up to the estimates period debate time in the legislature, and that is top of the list of my questions for the Minister of Health. So we'll be able to once again try and get an answer from the government on the timing of when this needed facility, seniors long-term care facility in Steveston will be started. So stay tuned for that, and I undertake to get back to you, Matt, with whatever answer I get from the health minister.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. We're going to switch gears completely here and go to another question on another topic. So though many may not think the forestry industry has many ties to Richmond, of course, we know it does, with a number of companies headquartered here, including Richmond-based Paper Excellence, which is one of the largest pulp and paper companies in the entire world, and they're based right here in Richmond. But we've seen that sector hurting for quite some time, and especially during this pandemic. Paper Excellence, unfortunately, just announced their Mackenzie pulp mill is curtailing operations this month. So I know it's not front and center, and there's a lot of issues that aren't front and center, but there's a lot of issues, there's a lot of challenges all across BC and all different parts of our economy. So can I get your take on the forestry crisis and how we can fix this in light of the increasing challenges they're facing because of this pandemic?
I'll jump in first as a son of a sawmill worker. I think I'll start there. And you know, there's been some structural challenges with forestry for a very long time. We are a high-cost producer, and we're not going to lower our wages or lower our standards in any way. Number one, we have had significant challenges in the United States in regards to, which has really turned into politics, sadly, which is, and I'm talking specifically around just softwood for a moment, selling our products to the US, the lobby there pushing back, and then we end up going to court. This thing goes on for months and months, or years and years actually, and then we end up coming down to a negotiated settlement. And usually that is a lot of politics as usual. So our percentage of, our forestry, our wood that goes to the US has been in slow decline. And hence the push the last 16 years to really drive as much trade as we can to Asia, which has been good for us. We've done well, particularly in China. But the other challenge with forestry, which we don't talk about, is that these mills are so much more efficient. I grew up in Williams Lake, so you could have had 5 or 6 big mills in a town of 12,000, 14,000, 16,000 people. And that would have been the main economic based community, and had 300 people working per sawmill. Today, due to mechanization and technology, you can have the same amount of output, but with 150 people. My dad is a lumber grader. You can do a lot of that now with technology. So there have been structural challenges that we've had, plus technical challenges. And add to that, government has added costs as well. With this particular government around EHT and some of these other issues, you've added more cost. Is that the only reason forestry's and the pulp industry's a challenge? No, but we have to continue to find a way to drive down costs for this industry. It is challenging in many cases because some of these companies not only own property or own businesses here in British Columbia and Canada, they also have subsidiaries in the US. So that's also a challenge for us as well when they're saying, look, if we can't do business here, we're gonna focus more on our US side. And that's been happening as well. So that's a challenge for us. So is forest industry down right now? Yes, it is. Will it be coming back? I sincerely hope it does, and I think it will, but it will be a different forest industry and pulp industry. There's no doubt about that. It is still a significant amount of jobs in rural British Columbia, and as Matt said, we have head offices here in Vancouver, significant amount of jobs, by the way, in Vancouver. We have Teal Jones in Surrey. We have head offices here, which pay for which lead to a lot of jobs here in the Lower Mainland. But there are structural challenges in regards to our cost structure. So we have to drive down some of those costs and find solutions for them. Some of them are government in regards to taxes. Some of them are policy related. And I'm not saying it's easy. It was a challenge when we were there, but I think with this government, we have driven up more on the tax side, and it's made it even more difficult to do so. And hence what you're seeing now with a significant amount of sawmills shutting down in the last 18 months in this province. Some of them temporary, a lot of them are permanent. They're not going to be coming back. So it is going to be a different industry, perhaps a little bit smaller, but it will over the long term be healthier as well. But at this particular point, significant structural challenges still within the industry in regards to dealing with those issues.
Yeah, thank you, Jas. And we watch these issues closely at our chamber.
Sorry, Matt, if I could just quickly add to what Jas said. We need markets for our lumber as well. And yes, there had been a slowing down, and certainly the challenges with the US market. But until recently, and still is, China was our largest market for lumber. And while there's challenges with the trade relationship, we should not forget that we need to continue to sell to the Asia Pacific. And one of the things that when we were in government, our government did was to ensure we had a very robust system of trade offices that were promoting products from BC, including lumber, right? And unfortunately, the current government chose to shut down those trade offices who are our people in places in Southeast Asia, in Asia, Asia Pacific, to market products, including lumber. So that's one of the things, unfortunately, that's happened, but we need to encourage the government to find ways to support forestry and other industries that are export focused to look at ways we can support them in finding new markets, new customers for our products, including lumber.
Well, thank you, John. So I have another question here, and it's in the area of WorkSafe. And before I go any further, I just have to say WorkSafe is, it's amazing. We work closely with the folks over there, and those people, I mean, I think there's close to 1,700 WorkSafe employees here in Richmond at their head office, and they are working 24/7. We had one of their folks on a webinar a few days ago, did a 90-minute session telling businesses everything they need to know to reopen. So doing a phenomenal job supporting employers so they get open, but at the same time, they're also the authority, and they have to make sure that businesses are safe, and they've got a bit of a stick as well if businesses aren't doing what they need to do. And this question is about a really big topic in Canada here in BC. It's a big thing on employers' minds. If one of their employees gets COVID and they're off for a number of weeks, what is the employer's responsibility as far as sick time, and how will those costs be handled? And it's something that I know a lot of businesses are worried about because there's huge costs involved, and there's been a lot of discussion between the province and the feds about how and who is going to pay for these, and it's still not clear. So to the question, this is based on a Vancouver Sun article that I believe came out last week. Are the MLAs aware of a potential move by WorkSafe BC to include COVID-19 as a presumptive workplace condition? This appears to be being fast-tracked and would have a major impact on all employers. The idea is that if you contracted COVID-19, it would be presumed to have been contracted at work, and your employer would have to prove that you didn't contract it at work. To me, this makes sense for hospitals, care homes, but not for all employers. Can you please comment on if this is what you're hearing and seeing as well, and just your views on this approach?
I'll jump in first. First of all, it's very concerning. I am aware of it, and it's one issue that we are going to aggressively question and challenge the government on. As I said in my opening remarks, we have potentially could lose 20 to 30,000 more businesses in this province, according to the Business Council of British Columbia in their study. And they're on the brink. It's rules and regulations like this that will also lead to further businesses shutting down. It's just that simple. The costs are challenging enough, like I've said in our first conversation with the Richmond Chamber. Prior to COVID, the government had raised 21 separate taxes in our province, which has raised $5.5 billion in extra revenue, or roughly comes out to about every man, woman, and child in this province paying an extra $1,100 in taxes already, pre-COVID. And then when you're adding regulations and rules like the one Matt has just described, it is incredibly concerning. Of course, public health matters, but this is where government has to step in, and it is a very unique period in our province's history and societies. So we have to find ways where we have to protect business to live another day, and adding regulation like this is incredibly concerning. On top of what I said already, which is the severance issue. I got to tell you, why would you want to open up when you know this is waiting for you? It's a tremendous amount of headache, for never mind starting up your business, and with all the PPE requirements, the health requirements, and then you've got the presumptive issue of COVID being something which is a workplace condition. So it's very concerning. We are aware of it, and I can guarantee you we'll be bringing up in a very aggressive manner to provide some clarity for business. Because I've said, there's two issues here. Public health, we've dealt with that, and we're going to continue to deal with that with Dr. Bonnie Henry. But the fundamental focus moving forward has to be economic recovery. Because if we don't have economic recovery, particularly with small business being alive and healthy and to live another day, to move forward and hire more people moving forward, it's going to be tough, folks. Already, look, students aren't going to be hired this summer. So they're going to have to need extra help from government on the federal government side. This is a huge challenge moving forward. And remember, we're going back and debating a budget just a few months ago that we could have said, okay, here's what we expect in revenue. Here's what we're going to be spending. It's just been blown out of the water. Just think about that for a second. A tourism industry is not going to deliver the tax revenue that we thought they were going to. The forest industry pre-COVID already was having difficulty delivering the revenue that it generally does year after year. You throw in other businesses and sectors, real estate. Yes, I anecdotally have been hearing that things have been picking up the last couple of weeks for the real estate industry, and there's been some buying, but we'll have to look at the numbers at the end of the day. But the revenue that comes from real estate, developers that have held off on projects to move forward. So the budget is, anybody's guess. I don't know if I'd want to speak to an economist today or a fortune teller, because I think I'd probably get the same answer, because nobody really knows. It's not just revenue generation. We have no idea as to how much revenue is going to be coming in. That next quarterly report is going to be very significant in regards to what government has in regards to paying, how they're going to pay for it. Childcare. We have a childcare plan. Does it matter anymore when we don't have the money? We want to build want to seismically upgrade our elementary schools. Is the money there to do it? I mean, these are fundamental questions that are now just up in the air, folks, in 4 months. And to add to that small businesses are now going to be the folks that are going to bear the brunt in regards to the expenses when it comes to COVID is absurd. There has to be clarity. And there isn't at this particular point. So the fundamental answer here is we are definitely going to be bringing this up in the next few weeks.
Well, thank you, Jas. And I want to look back on one of the areas you mentioned. I mentioned in my opening remarks, I mean, tourism, the aviation sector has been just absolutely hammered globally. And of course, here in Richmond, I mean, I estimate roughly 1 in 5 jobs in Richmond is on Sea Island. And we know that YVR and their tenants have just been hammered. And a direct spinoff of having the airport in our backyard is our local tourism sector. Roughly 20,000 people work in the tourism sector here in Richmond. I think the numbers that Nancy shared, it's like $2 billion in annual economic output from our local tourism sector. Like, it's just absolutely massive. And we see the impact. So many of our members are connected to these activities, and it's huge. So to my question, we're hearing that phase 3 could begin as early as next week. And this will include more encouragement around travel within BC and the rest of the country. If done safely, I think this is fantastic news. When done safely, I should say. So this is great news because, of course, tourism's nosedived and this impacts so many businesses. What would your government's plan, or what will be your advice to this government to help tourism-based businesses and tourism organizations, one, survive and then rebuild and get back on their feet?
I can probably start. Richmond, I think, has done a decent job in fast-tracking some of the patio development in terms of getting more folks out in the open air. The Keg Restaurant on 5 Road has just completed their patio expansion, if you will, probably used up about maybe 10 or 12 parking spaces, but it's going to help giving people the comfort to go out and support the tourism industry by being there and being there in what they're now considering safer environments if they can stay outdoors. So in terms of phase 3 coming in June, July, August, September, we should have 3 or 4 decent months of actually being able to support that. In terms of travel restriction being enlightened, probably a good thing. And the challenge for British Columbia is we have been incredibly compliant. I think individuals, when phase 3 moves into being, will actually take the opportunity to travel British Columbia more extensively. The MLAs had a lovely opportunity to meet with Nancy in terms of how best to go forward. She has our full support. There has to be ways for us to get British Columbians feeling more comfortable. The most recent survey document said, a month ago, 25% of people were comfortable going out. We're at about 60% of people finding comfort in the protocols and the distancing measures. So they will indeed, hopefully, embrace some more opportunities.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, we know a lot needs to be done. And one thing we're hearing, we need some clarity around interprovincial travel. I'm hearing from a lot of my colleagues who have chambers closer to the border, and it's causing major hostility in their communities. Albertans are not welcome. We're hearing stories of cars being keyed, people telling people off in the streets. I had a friend who told me his parents visited someone and they kind of hid their car behind another car, make sure their license plate wasn't visible, because how dare they have a horrible Albertan parked in their driveway. Like, there's a lot of concerns out there. And so one, we need clarity, and we need to safely open up our borders to help the tourism sector and Canadians in general. I mean, summer's on the horizon, the weather's started, and we got to do what we can to safely get this sector going again.
I think phase 3 will help us significantly, and I have also heard those very concerns talking to my colleague Doug Klobuchar in the Kootenays that many of the folks there were very concerned about Albertans coming in, although they're heavily reliant on Alberta travel and tourism. And I think with phase 3, and I don't think in the last 2 or 3 weeks they've had any COVID cases in that region. That's been part of the issue as well. So they do want to see some opening, albeit slowly. But I think part of the issue as well is the government's got to start financing and sort of a tourism campaign within British Columbia, and then move towards one in Western Canada as well, getting Canadians traveling in Canada as well. But our original comments that John made, PST relief helps small businesses significantly, EHT relief helps them significantly. All those issues, all those little things that you can do for business matter as well. Going back to severance payments, that's another issue. Those are the sort of big issues for a company with 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 employees that's going to make a difference. I'm not too worried about the companies with 300 to 400 or 500 employees, although you want them to do well and survive. I got a lot of those in my riding. But the bulk of business in this province still remains that small company with 1 to maybe 6 to 8 employees. That's the backbone of our economy, and I would argue the backbone of the chamber and its membership. And when you got to pay that severance, that's a huge hit. EHT is a huge hit. PST, even temporary relief for 2 or 3 months, make a significant change in the tourism sector. Like I said, marketing campaign within British Columbia, and let's expand that to Western Canada. Reality is, with the United States and what they're dealing with, and the challenges that they have, it's going to be very difficult, I think, this year for any sort of campaign with the United States. And some of the tourism folks may disagree with me, but I think it's still going to remain a challenge up until the end of 2020.
Thanks, Jas. John, yeah.
Yeah, tourism is probably one where the new normal will be quite different. And as we heard, the focus likely will shift to staycation, British Columbians traveling within our province. Lots to see and do here within our province. Come and, draw tourists from around BC to Richmond, for example. And the concept of a bubble that, perhaps when the timing is right, that within Canada, we can be a travel bubble that encourages cross-provincial travel. But it is going to be a challenge, with the travel restrictions, with the need for quarantine for inbound foreign travelers from many parts of the world, including Asia Pacific, having to be quarantined for 14 days, makes it challenging for the tourism industry. And we have to get past that to start to see the tourism sector, so important for Richmond, make a comeback. And glimmer of hope, at our recent discussion with YVR, we heard that traveling is starting to pick up, that the airport is starting to get busier with more flights. So we're hopeful.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Okay, so we're 10 minutes away. Still got a number of questions, so we're going to try and shift into more rapid fire mode, and we'll try and cover as much as we can in the pre-submitted and a few that have come via the chat. So as you all know, it's not a Richmond Chamber event without mention of the George Massey corridor. It's still, as important as ever, but of course it's taken a bit of a back burner during this pandemic. But I can say, personally, I'm hearing from members, I'm seeing traffic's picking up, people are returning to work, society's getting back, which is great. But with that comes congestion and some of the challenges we had pre-COVID. Recently, the Richmond Chamber presented to the Select Standing Committee on Finance, and we highlighted a number of issues such as Richmond Hospital, George Massey, and we also submitted a chamber to the BC Chamber in collaboration with Surrey Vancouver Delta, calling for the province to expedite this project. But we've seen some concerning comments from the Transportation Minister that indicate that this project could be further delayed. So more broadly, are you seeing indications of expedited federal funds for infrastructure projects? And are there signs that BC projects could be fast-tracked if shovel-ready? And how does that relate to the potential George Massey crossing replacement?
That would be obviously something that we would want to see, that the Massey Tunnel Crossing Replacement Project be changed from a slow walk, possibly a 10-year project, to a priority. And one of the things that we need to talk about as we look at the economic recovery is, spending by federal and provincial government on shovel-ready projects, on infrastructure projects, that are needed, but also will provide, a boost economically. And what better way than to have Massey Tunnel Crossing Replacement Project be one of those shovel-ready projects to put on a priority basis. So certainly, if the federal government has funds available, we would be calling on the province to make Massey Tunnel one of the priorities. And I'm sure my colleagues agree.
Yeah, I just want to jump in very quickly on this issue because it's near and dear to my heart. What frustrates me is that we had a $3.5 billion money set aside, $3.5 billion set aside for this bridge. The best bid that we got was $2.6 billion. So it's already $900 million under cost in regards to what we had set aside. So we had a really good deal. We canceled a 10-lane bridge to eventually announce an 8-lane bridge, potentially. What concerns me beyond that is within that $2.6 billion, $500 million was set aside for transit upgrades, meaning getting buses over that bridge and to Canada Line, which in this present conversation, there has been no talk about transit. So not only do you lose a bridge or a 10-lane bridge or whatever they're announcing now, there's been no talk about transit. So not only do you lose the bridge, you lost $500 million in transit improvements for essentially what was a shovel-ready project. We had sunk about $80 million into it, literally months away from starting. We had equipment actually coming in from Germany, and we all know what happened after that. It got canceled, and now we're starting the process again. So I personally don't see, I think it will be a bridge, and I think that's what the experts are going to tell them. But at the end of the day, I don't expect anything to be done by 2030. If we can expedite it, we're certainly going to push for it, because if you get more federal dollars in, the faster this project can move forward. Look, we need more transit, we need more bicycle lanes, but we'll also need more thoroughfares for vehicles as well. Hopefully all of us will be in electric vehicles in 20 years, but we're still going to need bridges at the end of the day to move traffic. You can all know Fire Road in Steveston, 2 o'clock is a no-go zone. And there's a lot of small businesses that get impacted. They're not attracting the customers, and we certainly have to deal with it. And like I said, it's not just a Richmond issue, it's a Delta issue, it's a South Surrey issue, it's a border issue, it's a ferry issue. They're going to have 8,000 residents living on the Tsawwassen First Nations land by the time that development is done as well. So there's greater development coming in from South Delta as well. And add to that an expansion to the Tsawwassen port. We're not going to expand the Vancouver port or the port in North Vancouver. There's not much room. The expansion is going to be in Tsawwassen, especially with that South Fraser Perimeter Road that was built. So this is all part and parcel of a broader regional transportation challenge that we have. And we can sit around here and debate it, but something has to be done. When you've got businesses in Richmond, and I know there's a plumbing company that when they have business south of Fraser, they send 2 plumbers, not because they need to, it's just they need somebody so they can use the HOV lane just to get through the tunnel. And that's not an efficient way to run business. And that's the challenge that we have. And so the frustrating part is not just the cancellation of the bridge, the original bridge, but the new bridge has nothing in regards to transit improvements. We've lost $500 million in transit improvements. And that's even more concerning.
Well, thank you, Jas. And I guess just to clarify, our message to the government has been, federal dollars are likely going to be available for shovel-ready projects. So how do we make the George Massey Crossing shovel-ready and access some of those likely billions of dollars and get things rolling? So we will see. Okay, we're running close to end of time here. Another very important question that's coming up, and it's on a lot of employers' minds, anyone who has kids. So there's still so much uncertainty about what will happen this fall in the school system. We've heard from School District 38 here locally that many schools and classrooms simply don't have the space required to maintain the current physical distancing regulations. At the same time, working people are struggling to facilitate education and childcare at home. And we know that women are being disproportionately impacted by the school situation and having to take on that work at home, keeping kids learning. And that's another issue, but we know that they're being disproportionately affected today. So do you have an indication when the ministry will make an announcement regarding what school will look like in the fall? Because this is top of mind for anyone with children and companies trying to reopen. Selfishly, my family included, but this is huge. It came up in a recent conversation with the local superintendent, and I think it's really important that there's direction and that there is a safe, fair solution that hopefully gets kids back in the classroom, allows parents to get back to work, but does it with a balance that acknowledges the situation. 2-minute answer, please.
Your points are very well taken, Matt. This Thursday, our education critic, Dan Davies, starts estimates, and that will be probably the #1 question that every parent in the province wishes he puts forward to the education minister, because it's an enormous challenge. I can tell you districts across the province looking at staggering hours, having 20% of the students attend for each hour of the day. There's a whole array of different scenarios percolating for September. But all the districts, I can tell you, are waiting for guidance from the education minister, which we hope starts this Thursday in Victoria.
Well, thank you. And I understand that it like I said, just physically, it's not possible to send 20 plus kids back to a classroom and have them 2 meters apart. Get that, but I hope that the government is considering additional supports to those families if their children can't be in school full time. Because if you're going to force parents to homeschool and find alternate arrangements, that's going to cause massive disruption for our economy. So I hope there's a balanced approach and all those factors are being considered.
The last month has been a dry run, Matt. This is all the government's been doing. There's also concern from teachers as well. We didn't send our son to school, but he did last week wanted to go just to see his classmates. He's in grade 6. So we let him go, and he enjoyed it, but it's a challenge for teachers as well. So this last month, I think, has really been government doing a dry run to see what it looks like. There are significant challenges, but they will have to provide clarity. It goes back to what I've said is economic recovery. Economic recovery also means, as you said, parents have a place to send their kids. They're safe and they're learning, and mom and dad can go make a living and also keep this economy running as well. It's part of economic recovery is a safe and healthy school environment for our kids. We will definitely be pushing on that.
I have the last question, and then I'm going to go over to Linda for the final remarks. And I'm going to throw this question to you, Jas, because I believe you are the ICBC critic.
Yeah.
So final question, and this is a topic, I won't get into it. We're all aware of some of the criticisms and challenges that ICBC's faced. Richmond Chamber is on record calling for the province to open ICBC to private competition. And I guess I have a focused question, Jas. This one question was specifically in regards to a young person in their life. They drive a car worth $1,500, but it costs $5,000 a year to insure it. And there's many, many stories with some of the challenges out there with ICBC. So the specific question is, what would a BC Liberal government do that's different than this current approach if you form government to ICBC?
Yeah, I would first of all take the politics out of it. And what I would do is my suggestion would be to get a panel of experts and you look at the systems across Canada. Because sometimes private insurance is cheaper, and sometimes, as you see in this case, sometimes private insurance is higher than what you would pay with ICBC. And I'm talking about somebody probably middle-aged with years of experience driving compared to a 20-year-old. A public system at its core should have public value. Right now, a 20-year-old paying $5,000 isn't public value. I don't think there's, what's the point of having a public insurance system when a kid's paying $5,000? With Scotia, what they do with the young people is, if we're going to give you one, not a free accident, but we're going to say, we're going to believe that you're a good driver. So you're not going to be paying the $5,000, but we're going to give you a rate that's reasonable. That's one thing I'd be looking at. In Saskatchewan, they have a very interesting public system, which is you all as consumers can pay for a tort system or a non-tort system, meaning no fault or at fault. And what it means is you can pay $2,500 a year to insure your car. What that means is if you get into an accident, we're going to take care of you within the system at ICBC. But if you want a right to sue and want to choose your own physiotherapist and you want your own flexibility, you'll pay, that same insurance will cost you $2,900. And that's available in Saskatchewan. So you as a consumer have choice. So those are the type of systems I'd be looking at, and then let the consumer decide ultimately. But I'd get a panel of experts, give us your recommendations, and then have a broader conversation with British Columbians. Too often politics gets played into this, and ICBC gets kicked around from one side to the other. Those who want to fully privatize, and those who say this is a 1972 system and I love it. So I think a broader conversation, but I think choice of people, Saskatchewan model is one that I particularly like, because then you decide. If you want protection, you hire a lawyer. If you don't, this is what you're going to be paying. So those are the type of things I think the conversation has to be about, and then we move forward. I think it would be very presumptive of me to say private insurance is going to save us all, because there are challenges there. As you see today, private insurance is having difficulty because they've got huge challenges of costs surrounding climate change and many other issues. If you want a condo today, everybody knows strata fees are going up significantly because there's not enough people, companies providing insurance. So there's less competition. They just want to get into that space. So people literally are seeing their strata fees double just to cover the insurance on their buildings. So I'm not saying private is the panacea, but there may be advantages there. But I think if you provide flexibility in a public system, let's talk about it as well. I'd open it all, actually, and just say, have a conversation. And then at this point, then leaders have to lead and decide. But I think it'd be very presumptive of me to say, this system is the best, but it's not. But like I said, Saskatchewan has some good examples. And if British Columbia say, look, overwhelmingly say we want private, I have no problem with that as well. But I'd rather they decide, have a choice and have that conversation. So that's where I stand on this issue. And it's going to remain for a while. And it is, I got to tell you, I get more emails on ICBC than anything else in my constituency offices, and everybody's got an opinion. So I hope that answers broadly and thoughtfully the question that you've asked. Because I think if I gave you one very specific answer, it would be disingenuous because it's a very complex system.
Well, thank you, Jas. So that puts it at time. I'm going to give the real final remarks to Linda. So I'm just going to be very brief here, and I'm going to thank all of you. I'm going to thank Fortis and David Bennett. Thank you so much for your support. And my one plug, June 30th, our 94th annual general meeting, virtual for the first time in our history. So please, to all our members, make sure you join us for AGM. We'll give you an update where the chamber's at, where we're going. June 30th on our website, free of course. Sign up. We got lots of cool free giveaways for those who stick around for the full 45-minute session. We'll be giving those away. So yeah, thank you to you. Thank you to the MLAs. You know, this is their second town hall, I believe. Last was about a month and a half ago. And these are just such amazing opportunities. And we know our members appreciate it because we see some of our highest registrations for these functions. So thank you. And on that, I'm going to give the real final remarks to my good friend Linda Reid.
Matt, thank you. And let me say thanks on behalf of the Richmond MLAs to Fortis, to Dave, to the Richmond Chamber of Commerce, because the opportunity doesn't exist for our colleagues across the province. We enjoy a spectacular relationship with the Richmond Chamber, and we're truly grateful. For all of us, getting the economy back on track in British Columbia is job one. Families in British Columbia are depending on us. I said at the last one, the best social program in the world is a job. I truly believe that. All of us want the opportunity to care for our families. So how we go forward, what we do next, hugely important. We are the party of free enterprise. So anytime we can have a better connection with business and can hear directly from business, we're grateful for that opportunity. You will know that Canada is doing the best in the world when it comes to handling COVID. British Columbia is doing the best in Canada, and Richmond, frankly, is doing the best of all the cities in our province. So we've got lots to be proud of. We got to stay safe, stay calm. But the notion that we can rebuild the economy on a go-forward basis is truly before us. So thanks very much, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. You know, that's a point that can't go unnoticed. You're right. I mean, Richmond truly is doing phenomenally well with how this situation has been handled. You know, kudos to our friends at the City of Richmond, Vancouver Coastal Health. I know we are working together. We are very compliant, British Columbia, as I think you mentioned that earlier, Linda. You know, a lot of these measures are voluntary, and I think at BC, we did everything we could and more. And now we just really need to focus on the future and how do we continue to work together to find that balance in the fall when, unfortunately, the likely wave 2 comes back. But need to keep our economy going and growing and you know, creating more prosperity. So thank you for everything you guys do. We'll be watching closely in Victoria next week, probably sitting right here. And, you know, kudos to the City of Richmond. They've gone virtual as well, and more of the functions at City Hall are available. So if anything good has come out of this, I think some of the accessibility and transparency to government has been great to see. So thank you for that and keep it up. And thanks everybody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Enjoy, I think, a rainy Saturday tomorrow, but the sun will of course come back on Monday.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.